The Palmetto State Armory Dagger. Is it the cheapest Glock clone on the market? Is it the most features that you can get for your money? Is it even reliable? I've had this one for a while now, so we're gonna do a full real review on it. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical, the PSA Dagger. Gen 3 Glock 19 clone that everyone can afford. And honestly, you get a lot for your money. There are tons of features with this thing. I put this together a couple years ago as the Gucci Glock on a budget build series. But this is the first time I've decided to really do an actual review on the Dagger because I've put a lot of rounds through it by now. I've ran it pretty hard. It's just, I've shot it a ton. I have no idea how many rounds are through this thing. A couple thousand at least. And I've used it as a testing gun. I've had a lot of things sent to me on the channel, different lights, different optics, and this is the gun that I've tested them all on. It has had one issue, and it is a major issue, and we'll get into that. But this is the review of the PSA Dagger from Sawtooth Tactical. Make sure you're subscribed, and let's get into it. I did a whole build series on the PSA Dagger a couple years ago, I think. And we called it the Gucci Glock on a budget because you really do get a lot of features for not really a whole lot of money, which is kind of what PSA does. I mean, right here, we've got slide cuts. We've got a titanium nitride coated barrel. We've got a threaded barrel. We've got an optic cut. We've got suppressor height sights. We've got a frame that has pretty good ergonomics. But there's also drawbacks, and we'll talk about those too. But first, let's shoot. Glock 19 Gen 3 clone. So Glock, their Gen 3 patent ran out basically. And anybody that wanted to could make a clone of their design. And a lot of companies did. Well, Palmetto State Armory, their big thing is that they sell direct to consumer. You don't get a PSA gun that was built by them, sold to a distributor, sold to a gun shop, and then sold to you with everyone needing to make a profit on the way. They make the guns, they sell them direct to you. And so they're able to do that at a very cheap price point because they cut out all the middlemen. So you can get a PSA Dagger for a very good price. The basic Dagger, the extreme carry cuts, I think it's called, is like 300 bucks. It might even be less than that at this point. One like this, a little bit more Gucci'd up with all the slide cuts, the threaded barrel, the optics cut, the suppressor height sights, all of that stuff still comes in at a very affordable price point. I think I put this whole thing together for 500 bucks, and that was a couple years ago, and the price has come down since then. So you can really build one of these out really, really affordable. You can get one that's put together for you already, or you can buy the frame, whichever color basically that you want, and then whatever slide that you want, and they have a number of different slides with different cuts, with or without optics cuts, with or without threaded barrels. You have a lot of options, and it comes in at a really, really affordable price point, which makes them very attractive to somebody that wants a Gucci Glock, but doesn't want to buy a Glock and then put another $500 to $1,000 in it to get all of the features that they want. You can get a PSA Dagger with all of those features for less than the price of a basic Glock. But is it as good as a Glock? Right off the bat, I'm going to say probably not. But is it pretty damn good? Especially for the price, it absolutely is. And we're going to get into all of that in this video. You get tons of features. Do you get a reliable gun? Well, mine, like I said, has had one major problem, and we will talk about that here in a minute. But ever since I fixed that problem, it's been 100% reliable as any other gun that I've owned after I fixed that issue. But before we get into this whole review, let's have a quick word from our channel partner. If you'd like to help support Sawtooth Tactical, the very best way to do that is to click the first link in the description. That link is aura.com/sawtooth-tactical. If you use my link, you get a 2-week free trial. And you can quit anytime, but you probably want to stick with it as I have. What has Aura done for me? Well, I don't get any spam calls anymore. I don't get spam emails. I don't get calls from scammers. What they do is they find all the data brokers that have your information online. They submit opt-out requests on your behalf so that you don't get scammers and spam calls anymore. But they do a lot of other things too. They have a VPN, which just helps to protect your privacy. They've got a ton of stuff, and it all comes in at a very low price. If you stick with it after that 2 weeks, it is only $12 a month. I think Aura is pretty cool because they sponsor gun-related channels, which not a lot of sponsors are willing to do that. And it really helps channels like mine be able to produce this kind of content. YouTube doesn't really like to monetize gun-related videos anymore. And so sponsors like Aura make things like Mark 18 builds possible. So check it out. It's definitely worth trying it out for 2 weeks. Like I said, you're probably going to want to stick with it. I don't have to worry about scammers anymore. I don't have to worry about spam calls, spam emails. And that's been really nice. I use my phone for work, and so I have to answer calls that I don't recognize all the time. And none of them are scammers anymore. And I really like that. So again, check it out. First link in the description, aura.com/sawtooth-tactical. I can almost guarantee that you're going to love it. Check it out. We're doing PSA in a PSA. This is 124 grain AAC 9mm. This ammo's been really reliable for me. We're also testing out some new hearing protection. These are the ProHear electronic ear pro, and I can hear very well with them. The sound amplification seems really good so far, and when I'm shooting, it does what it's supposed to do as far as deadening that sound. So we're gonna keep testing them out, see if they're as good as the walkers that I usually run. I'm sure everyone wants to know, what is that major problem that I had? Well, the striker assembly broke, the firing pin specifically, and that was within the first 500 rounds. And that specifically is the reason that I say that it's not as good as a Glock, because if you buy a Glock, you're almost guaranteed not to have some issue like that. And any manufacturer can have issues, and I believe that my firing pin, my striker, probably wasn't heat treated properly. But I also know, because I put out a video when it happened, that that same issue has happened to a lot of other people. Now, when you think about the grand scheme of things and the number of daggers sold, it's probably a very small percentage of guns that had that problem. But mine did, and it's the only handgun that I've ever had that had a firing pin break. And to be quite honest, if you guys watched my review on my 11.5-inch PSA AR pistol, which is now a suppressed SBR, that one had the bolt break. That's the only AR that I've ever had that's had a bolt break. And so, other than that, I've loved that AR, but the bolt broke. Other than this firing pin breaking, I've loved this pistol, but the firing pin did break. And so when you are buying a more affordable gun, you are taking a higher risk that something like that might happen. But at the same time, as soon as I realized that that was the issue, came home from the range that day after my gun did not work, well, I took it apart, figured out what the issue was. I ordered another striker assembly off PSA, and it was like 12 bucks, 14 bucks, something like that. It was very cheap to fix it. And I'm sure if I'd reached out to PSA, they would have sent me one for free. I'm sure they take care of stuff like that. But it was the weekend, and I just wanted to make sure that I got my gun running again, and it was cheap enough that I just ordered it. Why didn't I replace it with a Glock OEM striker assembly? Well, because I wanted to see if it was an issue with just that PSA striker, or if it was an issue with the gun. And so I wanted to see if another PSA striker assembly would last. And I'm happy to report that through thousands more rounds since then, it's all good. Striker assembly is great. The gun is perfectly reliable, as it should. Being that Glock is now an actual platform, not just a brand, you would think that something built on the Glock platform should be reliable. And after replacing the striker assembly, this thing has been very reliable. The Dagger is a Gen 3 Glock 19 clone. At least the Dagger Compact is. They've got an even smaller one now for concealed carry specifically. But this is the original Dagger, Compact. It's a Gen 3 Glock clone, which means that it takes Gen 3 Glock parts, which is really nice because then you can do things like switch out triggers, switch out mag releases, and really upgrade it and personalize it to make it your own while not spending a whole lot of money. I am also at the shooting the range footage today. I was trying out a new set of ear pro that was sent to me. These are from ProHear. They're called the ProHear Machete. They're a very similar design to Walker's Razor Ear Pro. And I'm happy to report that so far they work very well. They have a 23 decibel noise reduction rating, 4 times hearing enhancement, and that does all work. I do have to say, I felt like the hearing enhancement worked better in my left ear than my right ear, but I also have some hearing damage and more of it in my right ear. It just seemed a little bit less even than the Walkers that I normally wear. But I think for the price, these could be a great option. We are going to continue to test these out on the channel for a while. As long as they hold up and do what they're supposed to do, I'll let you guys know. Now, getting back to the Dagger, let's go up close and take a look at the features because it is very feature rich for the price. And I think that one of the best things about it is the ergonomics. This gun, to me, feels better in my hands than a Glock does. There's a reason you might see behind me, you don't see any Glocks. I think Glocks are great guns. They're extremely reliable. They're more accurate than I can be. But to me, they don't feel very ergonomic. I've never been a huge fan of the grip angle, and they just kind of feel like holding a 2x4. And the Dagger doesn't feel that way. I bought this Dagger frame before anything else because, like I said, it was a build series, and that's what I started with. And I gotta say, when I got it, I was happily surprised how good this grip felt in my hands. So let's take a closer look at it. So when we look at the PSA Dagger, I've heard some people say that it just doesn't feel as high quality as a Glock. And to an extent I agree, and to an extent I disagree. I think the frame, like I said, feels really good. I think the ergonomics are great. The biggest issue that I had with the ergonomics was the mag release. But being that it's a Gen 3 Glock clone, it was a standard Gen 3 Glock mag release. The Gen 3 Glock mag release just sucks. And so I replaced it with the Glock Store Teardrop extended mag release. And it made all the difference in the world. If you're going to get a Dagger or any Gen 3 Glock, I definitely recommend this mag release. It comes in a ton of colors. I wanted to get it in black, but they were out of stock, and so I got the gold because it matched the titanium nitride barrel. Now, when I say that I agree and I disagree, when I first got it, especially, and it has smoothed out over time, the slide and the action just does not feel as smooth or as high quality as a Glock or even as some other polymer striker fired pistols that I'm used to, like my M&P. This feels very quality, very smooth for a striker fired gun. And this one, it used to kind of get stuck in the open position when I first got it, and I could still even feel it catching a little bit. Has it ever caused it a reliability issue? No. The thing is cycled just fine from day one, and it's broken in over time. But I guarantee part of that is because, well, I mean, Glocks are the same way. they are mass produced. There's tons of parts made and then they just put them together. And you know, I bought a slide and a barrel separate from the frame and, you know, put them together. And it has always worked just fine. But that action does feel, even after thousands of rounds, just not quite the same as a Glock slide feels. And you can also see, if you look in these window cuts, it's pretty thin in areas, at least where these cuts are. But has it ever caused me a problem? No. The thing has worked just great. And the thing about this dagger is, look at what you get for the price. Besides the optic and the light and the trigger that I've, you know, installed aftermarket, the base gun itself costs less than a base Glock. But what did I get for that price? Well, I got a slide with cuts in it and front slide serrations, an optics cut. It came with suppressor height sights. It came with a threaded titanium nitride coated barrel, all these windows. You get a lot of features for the money right off the bat. And if you don't care about things like slide cuts and stuff, well, then it's even cheaper if you get more of a basic one. Besides that, being that it is a Gen 3 Glock clone, as I keep saying, it'll take Gen 3 Glock parts, meaning that I was able to switch the mag release out, the one part that I didn't like. And with this new mag release, it's very easy to actuate. I also switched out the trigger. Now, the trigger is one thing on it that people have complained about. It has a curved hinged trigger that is not great, but is it any worse than any other Glock trigger? Not really. So I put the Timney Alpha Gen 3 and 4 Glock trigger in it, and it made a huge difference. And you can do that because, again, it takes Gen 3 Glock parts. Now, just to be clear, when you do switch out something like the trigger on these, you'll see that the main two pins here are actually roll pins. They're not like Glock pins that you can just push out with a Glock tool or any thin poker. These pins were not easy to get out. I had to use a punch and a hammer, and it was work to get those pins out. Getting them back in, not quite as bad, but that is something to be aware of. If you're going to get a dagger and you're going to switch trigger or parts out, getting these main pins out, not easy. Now, the trigger pin, not a big deal. But those roll pins do kind of suck. And there's something where I just wish PSA would have used regular Glock pins, but it is what it is. To an extent, you do get what you pay for, but to another extent, you actually get a lot more than you pay for. For one thing, I didn't have to send this off to get the slide milled. When I got this M&P, it was not optics ready. I had to send this off. I had to get the slide milled, recoated, all that. If I'd wanted higher sights, luckily I don't need them because the optic height on here, I would have had to add different sights. Well, the dagger, it comes optics ready and you can choose your optic cut. Now, if you're smart, you're going to choose the RMR cut. If you're not, you're going to choose the doctor cut. Sorry to anybody that chose the doctor cut, but you just have a lot more options with the RMR cut. I put a Holosun on this, but this gun has had like, I don't know, 8 different optics on it because every time a company sends me out an optic to test, I tested on this gun because the majority of optics on the market are RMR footprint. And so this gun has been able to accommodate all of them. But I always do end up going back to this Holosun. And it's nice to have these tall sights. They co-witness great through the optic and they come on it standard. If you don't want tall sights, you can order a slide with the short sights. If you don't want a threaded barrel, you don't have to get it. These are all just options. And like I said, I was trying to do a Gucci Glock on a budget. So I thought titanium nitride would look cool with the window cuts. And if I ever wanted to suppress it or put a comp on it, I might as well have the threaded barrel so that I would be able to do that. Ergonomically, I actually think that the dagger feels better than a Glock. It's got one finger groove and the frame just has a better shape to it in my opinion. It doesn't feel quite as much like holding a 2x4. Besides the striker, the firing pin, breaking within the first 500 rounds. How has the reliability been? Well, it's been really good. Ever since I replaced that striker assembly, I've not had a single hiccup with it. This gun runs great. Every once in a while, I will get it not, locking back on the last round, but that is a me problem. It's usually because my thumb is on the slide release when I get past that last round. It's not really the gun's fault. That has to do with the Glock design. And again, like I said, it takes Gen 3 Glock parts, including it has a Glock accessory rail, so you can put whatever light you want on it. I choose the Streamlight TLR-1 HL. I love that light. I've got it on a bunch of guns. As you can see, it's a great light. And it's a lot cheaper than a Surefire X300. And it comes in colors that match. So you can add a light and an optic to a dagger very easily. You can switch out the trigger very easily, the mag release very easily. You can put a comp or a suppressor on this if you want very easily, because again, you can get it with a threaded barrel for a minimal amount of extra money. And that's the big thing about this gun, is you get a lot for what you pay for it. And I think that that has a lot of value. Now, is it going to be as good as a Glock? Well, like I said, broken firing pin, so no. But is it going to be like 90% as good for half the price of a Glock? Pretty much. And that's kind of the great thing about it. And so, as you guys know, like lately I've been kind of building more expensive, Guccier guns. But a lot of people aren't looking to spend $5,000 on a rifle or even put $2,500 into a 2011 platform, but they'd like something custom, something personalized, and something reliable. And I think the PSA Dagger is a pretty great option when it comes to something like that. Would I trust this as much as an actual factory Glock 19? That trust has been gaining back. For a long time I didn't, and for a long time after that striker broke, I would check it all the time and make sure that it was still good, because I want to be able to know that I could use any of my guns defensively if I needed to. But that's been like a couple of years now since I replaced that, and it hasn't had an issue since. And so my confidence in it has gotten pretty good again. Is it accurate? Well, honestly, it's more accurate than I could be. And yeah, I'm sure I could work on my shooting. In fact, I know that I need to. But I do feel confident that this gun will, put around where you put that dot, as long as it's zeroed and you have a good trigger pull. It does what a Glock is supposed to do. Does the Dagger have that famous Glock reliability? Well, I have had one kind of major issue with mine, but ever since fixing that, it's ran great. We will talk about that issue, I'm sure, in this video. So let me know down in the comments if you have experience with the PSA Dagger, because it's been out for a couple of years now. In fact, now they even have like a Gucci version of the Dagger that is like $600 and is super Gucci'd out. Literally everything that you would do to make a Gucci Glock, but for like a third the price, or maybe even less than that. The Dagger is an incredible value. And while if I was going to build another Gucci gun or put a bunch of money into a gun, at this point it would probably be a 2011 platform. I just think that they're so much easier to shoot really well than striker fired guns. For a striker fired gun and to scratch that Gucci Glock itch, this thing has done it for me, and it's been a great gun, honestly. I've tested a ton of optics on it. I've tested different lights and lasers even that people have sent me, companies have sent me for the channel. And I've never had an issue with the gun not working. Again, caveat, ever since I replaced that broken striker. But let me know what your experience has been. Did you have the dreaded broken striker? Or have you had a perfectly reliable dagger like mine has been ever since I fixed that part? Do you think it's as good as a Glock? Do you think it's better than a Glock? Because I know some people do, and to be quite honest, it feels better than a Glock in my hand. I sold my Glock, but I haven't sold my dagger. For one thing, I don't think I'd be able to get what I put into this out of it. And honestly, I try not to really sell guns anyway, unless it is to be able to afford something new and even cooler. I'm sure I'll get another Glock at some point. I'll probably get 5 more Glocks at some point. But my point is, I've kept this as a testing gun, but also it's just a fun gun to shoot. It's great to give this gun to somebody else. It's got a really good trigger now with the Timney trigger. I mean, this thing is pretty sweet. And you can put any aftermarket Glock trigger in it. You can put a Johnny Glocks in here if you want. You can put a Timney, you can put whatever. The Glock, I don't know about the Glock performance trigger. I think that's only for Gen 5. And that is one thing about this. If you're gonna get a dagger, you have to get Gen 3 parts if you're gonna upgrade and change things. Not Gen 5 parts, they might not work. In fact, they probably won't work. But I wanna know what you guys think about the dagger. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Make sure you subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. Share it. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.